Hey, you there. We don't need someone from a third-rate med school. Your job offer is revoked.
His cruel words echoed throughout the quiet orientation room. Since he was pointing directly at me, everyone's eyes naturally turned toward me. As a new hire, I couldn't respond quickly and had no choice but to listen.
Get out of here. Security, get this guy out.
At that signal, a security guard rushed toward me, but I moved before he could reach me. I've had enough of this place. I made that decision in an instant and said as calmly as I could. Understood. Then, I'll leave now. I quickly stood up to exit, but the guard grabbed my arm in no time. He forcefully dragged me to the entrance and shoved me outside, causing me to fall hard on my backside.
Go home right now.
The security guard turned on his heel and walked away briskly. I sat there in a daze. Suddenly, a man, who looked to be in his 60s, extended his hand to me and asked, "Are you okay?" I never imagined at that moment that this encounter would change my life and others forever. My name is Andrew Carter. I've been working tirelessly, aiming to become a specialist in pediatric surgery, and I managed to secure an offer from a prestigious general hospital. And today was the first day of work that I had been waiting for. My journey to this point has been really hard. When I arrived at the venue and saw the large sign that read General Hospital Orientation, I was overwhelmed with emotion, realizing I had finally become a doctor, but I firmly held back the tears that threatened to well up. This is just the beginning. The orientation isn't the finish line, but it's the start. I straightened myself up, walked through the building entrance, and completed the check-in process. As I watched the nervous faces heading toward the main hall, I felt a little excited, thinking that these people would soon be my colleagues. As I moved toward the lobby, I noticed a small crowd gathered around someone. Thinking it was just a group of classmates, I casually glanced over as I walked past. But the moment I saw the person at the center, I froze in place. The man in the middle, laughing loudly enough to fill the lobby, was someone I knew all too well. Why is he here? My fists clenched in rage. He was the one person I could never forgive. His name was Richard Goodman. A man I would never forget. The worst man I've ever known. I have a brother, Ethan, who is 5 years younger than me. When I was in 8th grade and Ethan was in 3rd, he was in a terrible car accident during summer break, which left him paralyzed on his left side due to a spinal cord injury. Ethan was talented in sports, especially soccer, and he practiced diligently, often saying, "My dream is to become a professional soccer player." I wholeheartedly supported him. And the person who stole Ethan's dream was none other than Richard, the man now standing before me, laughing loudly. Richard noticed my glare, and when our eyes met, he widened his eyes for a moment, seemingly surprised. Then, for some reason, he flashed a sly smile, as if he had spotted prime prey during a hunt, and started walking toward me. Even as he smiled, his gaze showed his disdain, as though he found my presence at this prestigious place offensive. Just as Richard opened his mouth to speak, the host's voice cut through the air.
The orientation will begin in 5 minutes. New hires, please proceed to the hall and take your seats.
We both froze, remembering where we were. Could this man really be connected to this hospital? A wave of disgust washed over me. Richard shot me a final derisive glance before disappearing into the entrance ahead. My mind was in chaos. No way. This can't be real. Please, let this be a bad dream. I fought to stay calm as I took my seat. The host stepped up to the podium and began the orientation right on time. After the opening remarks, a stout man with a thick mustache walked onto the stage. First, I have an announcement. Starting this April, our new director is George Goodman. The introduction began, but the moment I heard the name and saw his face, my entire body froze.
Thank you for the introduction. I'm George Goodman.
George began his self-introduction and spoke about his role as the new director, but none of it registered in my mind. I was completely absorbed in my own thoughts. And it was no wonder George was Richard's father, the man who covered up his son's crime as the perpetrator of Ethan's accident. My parents divorced before Ethan was born, and I never knew my father. My mother raised us alone, but after giving birth, her health deteriorated, and she passed away quickly. We had no other relatives, so Ethan and I grew up together in the same foster home. The staff there were wonderful people. I had always dreamed of taking Ethan with me and leaving the foster home once I was able to work so that we could live together as brothers. But during my 8th grade summer break, after playing soccer with Ethan at the park and heading back to the foster home, Ethan walked ahead of me, crossing the street at a green light. Out of nowhere, a reckless motorcycle ran the red light at terrifying speed and slammed into him. The bike was carrying 2 riders without helmets, weaving dangerously as it sped. Ethan was thrown into the air and hit the ground with a sickening thud.
Ethan!
I rushed toward him, but he was bleeding heavily and barely conscious.
I'll call an ambulance right now.
Since the foster home was nearby, I ran back to explain the situation to one of the staff and then hurried back to Ethan's side. The staff member called the police and emergency services, and Ethan was rushed to the hospital by ambulance. But despite the doctor's desperate efforts, he had suffered a spinal cord injury. Although his life was saved, he was left paralyzed on his left side. Right after the accident, one of the bikers finally stopped, looked back at us, and shouted, "Crap! Let's get out of here," before speeding off. I'll never forget that moment. That guy was none other than Richard. Because he wasn't wearing a helmet, I could see his face clearly, and his cocky expression was burned into my memory. Despite the chaos, I managed to memorize the license plate number of the bike. While Ethan was fighting for his life in the ICU, I went to the police station with the foster home staff to report the details of the accident. The police quickly traced the bike and found out it belonged to Richard. However, instead of apologizing to Ethan, Richard's father, George, somehow made the entire accident disappear. My testimony was dismissed as a misunderstanding due to a lack of security cameras or other witnesses.
No, that bike was parked near the scene. You probably just assumed it was the offender's bike. After all, he wasn't involved in any crash, so you must be mistaken about that plate number.
They made it seem like I was mistaken, and Richard was never held accountable.
I'm begging you. Please investigate the accident properly. I didn't get the license plate wrong. And that photo, it's him riding the bike.
Look, I get it, but you grew up in a foster home and probably need money. Listen, The investigation is over now. Coming back here won't change anything. So why don't you head home now?
No matter how many times I pleaded, they dismissed me with cruel indifference. In the end, I was painfully reminded that the world revolves around cunning, deceitful adults. Ethan, who was left paralyzed on his left side, began life in a wheelchair, and his dream of becoming a professional soccer player was shattered. I couldn't keep burdening the foster home forever, so I desperately begged the staff to let me work. Despite being a middle schooler, I lied about my age and worked tirelessly, saving every penny I could. I was determined to get a job after graduating high school, though my grades had always been excellent throughout elementary and middle school.
I understand how you feel, but your grades are outstanding. For your future wages and your brother's care, you should at least finish high school.
They even told me, "You don't need to worry about high school tuition. Your mother left a small inheritance, and you can cover the rest with scholarships and part-time work." While I was torn about my future, one day Ethan said with a smile, "You're smart, Andrew. I bet you could become a doctor and heal me someday." His words inspired me, and I decided to pursue a career in medicine. With my determination, I consulted with my teacher and the foster home staff to figure out how to keep costs as low as possible while continuing my education. I went to a public high school. I focused on my studies while using all my weekends and evenings to work part-time. Even with my busy schedule, I kept my grades up, thanks to the support of the foster home staff. I hated the thought of relying on them too much, but I had no choice. Instead, I swore to myself that I would repay their kindness when I became an adult. After graduating high school, I had no choice but to leave the foster home, and although it pained me, I asked them to continue caring for Ethan while I lived alone, balancing my studies and part-time jobs, pushing myself harder than ever. I thoroughly researched every financial aid program available for college and took full advantage of them. Although it was considered a third-rate university, I graduated at the top of my medical school class and worked hard to secure a job, eventually making it to today's orientation. After everything I had endured to reach this point, I couldn't believe that the man I despised had become the new hospital director. At the time, I hadn't realized that the very man who ruined my brother's life had somehow become a doctor entrusted with saving lives. A thought that filled me with rage until the surrounding voices brought me back to my senses. When I looked up at the stage, I saw Richard being called up along with a few other doctors.
This is Richard Goodman, an exceptional doctor who will be joining us as the new head of surgery this April.
The host announced as they continued introducing the department heads. I noticed George whispering something to Richard, and the moment the introductions ended, Richard grabbed the microphone from the host and pointed straight at me.
"There's a liar from the foster home sneaking into this orientation."
He sneered at me with a twisted grin, taunting me. Naturally, the people in the hall turned their attention toward me, and the room erupted in whispers. George, puzzled by the commotion, watched Richard, who whispered to him again while glancing at me. George's face darkened as he recognized me, and he took the list of new hires from his secretary and quickly found my name. His expression twisted as if to say, "How dare you come here to bring up the past?" I was stunned that he even remembered the accident.
This orientation is for elite doctors. This is no place for someone like you from a foster home.
Despite being the director, he insulted me in front of all the new hires. as if I'd ever work in a hospital run by the family responsible for Ethan's tragedy. My fists clenched with rage. Richard peeked at my entry form in George's hand and burst out laughing, saying, "A poor loser like you, a doctor? Your medical license must be fake." Then he added with a sneer, "Which med school did you even graduate from? Never heard of it. And does it even exist?" George followed up with another shout, "We don't need anyone from a third-rate med school raised in a foster home at this prestigious hospital. Get out of here. Someone, throw him out." Within moments, several security guards rushed toward me. Unable to react or argue back, I told myself I didn't need this job anyway, forced myself to stay calm, stood up, and said, "Understood. I'll leave now." But even though I wasn't resisting at all, the security guards grabbed my arms, dragged me out of the hall, and shoved me roughly, as if I were a criminal. They took me all the way to the building's entrance and then pushed me hard while yelling, "Hurry up and get out of here," before turning away and leaving. I stumbled and fell onto the ground, landing hard on my backside. Ouch! This is pathetic. As I sat there, paralyzed by frustration and humiliation, a calm and gentle voice suddenly came from above me, saying, "My goodness, how rough they were. Are you all right?" I looked up and saw an elderly man holding out his hand to me. I took his hand and stood up, saying, "Oh, thank you so much."
You really had a tough time there, by the way.
The man casually reached into his suit pocket and took out a business card. "I have an urgent matter today, so I'm sorry to trouble you, but I'd be happy if you could contact me later when you have time," he said with a kind smile. His warmth, despite his busy schedule, brought tears to my eyes. The man added firmly, "Promise me you'll get in touch." He gently patted my shoulder and walked away with a reassuring smile. 1 week after that incident, I was walking toward the medical office, dressed in a brand new white coat. I had officially started my journey as a new doctor. Of course, it wasn't at the hospital where the Goodman family worked. It was at a rival hospital, one that stood as a competitor to theirs. After calming down from the incident, I contacted the man who helped me that day. It was Mr. Sam Stanton. It turned out that Sam was the chairman of the board of a renowned medical foundation. When I contacted him, he said, "I'd really like to meet you in person and talk." He invited me to his home, where I shared everything that happened at the orientation, my brother Ethan's story, and all the details about the accident. After I finished, Sam had a serious expression, but then smiled gently. "You've been through more than words can describe, but you're safe now, and leave everything to me." He helped me find a new job at a top-tier hospital where his son was the director. Although I had graduated from what some considered a third-rate university, I had worked hard throughout my time there and even graduated at the top of my class. My thesis had caught the attention of the previous director of the hospital where the Goodman family worked, which was why I had initially received the offer, but that offer was revoked due to George Goodman's personal grudge. However, thanks to meeting Sam, I was able to start my career as a doctor. One day, while I was diligently working as a new physician, I received several missed calls from the same unknown number. I was too busy with work and couldn't return the calls, but then the hospital phone rang.
Dr. Carter, you have a call.
"Thank you. Please connect me." I picked up the phone, wondering who it could be, and to my surprise, it was George Goodman.
Why haven't you been answering your phone? You made me call the hospital directly.
Well, as you know, I work at this hospital now.
I don't care about that. You need to come to my hospital immediately. Do you understand?
He was just as arrogant and overbearing as ever. Why should I go there? You're the one who revoked my offer in the first place.
Well, it's because the research from your thesis is crucial for our hospital. The research team we put together based on your findings is in an uproar. Just send over the data, at the very least. Dealing with you has been nothing but trouble.
According to his one-sided demands, they had formed a research team for future medical advancements using the content of my thesis, and now wanted me to hand over the rights. In fact, when I showed my thesis to Sam, he said, "This is a treasure trove of ideas essential for the future of medicine," and other doctors who read it gave it high praise as well. Based on that research, a new drug development and medical improvement team was formed, and we presented our findings after making significant progress. The presentation was so well received that I was interviewed by the media, which led to even more attention and recognition. Our hospital quickly rose to prominence. Originally, it was my research that had earned me the initial jobs offer, but as I've said, George canceled it out of personal spite. There was no way I'd go back now. It would be a betrayal of Sam's kindness. I'm continuing my research here, and I have no intention of ever working at your hospital. What? Then you'll ruin your hospital's reputation, he threatened. In a flash of anger, I shot back. Try it if you dare. I hung up the phone firmly. Though I didn't regret standing my ground, I wondered if I'd gone too far, so I immediately informed Sam about the call.
You really gave it to him.
He didn't get angry at my final words. Instead, he praised me. He said, "Leave this matter to me and focus on your medical work," so I reluctantly decided to entrust it to him. A few months later, the Goodman family became the center of media scandals and tabloid headlines. And of course, not in a good way. Under George Goodman's arrogant, authoritarian leadership, the prestigious university hospital's reputation plummeted. Reports of embezzlement, cover-use of medical errors, and other misdeeds surfaced, and the headlines read, "Prestigious Hospital Falls from Grace." Richard was also exposed for falsifying his academic record, securing his position through favoritism, and blaming other doctors and staff for his mistakes, forcing many to resign. The media didn't hold back, even digging into his misconduct during his student years. Finally, the truth about Ethan's car accident cover-up came to light. Though the statute of limitations on the accident had expired after 3 years, the severity of the incident, their poor treatment of the victim, and the cover-up became widely known, leading to the Goodman family's complete downfall. Since everything was going so smoothly, I asked Sam, "How did you manage this?" But he simply smiled and said, "Well, maybe it was just divine justice." A chill ran down my spine, so I decided not to press any further and instead focused on my medical work. I believed that dedicating myself to medicine was the best way to repay Sam for saving me and my brother from our struggles. I recalled the day of the orientation when Sam extended his hand to help me. At the time, Sam had been invited to the ceremony as the chairman of a prestigious medical foundation, but he disliked formal events and had declined to attend. However, something had drawn him to check the scene from outside. With a laugh, he said, "I think fate gave me the chance to meet you, Andrew." After I had told him everything that day, Sam took in Ethan, who had been staying at the foster home beyond the usual age limit, and even welcomed both of us as his adopted sons.
Our house is wheelchair accessible, and my wife is thrilled because our kids left home, so she's happy to have you both here. If you ever need an aid, just let me know.
I received so much of his kindness that I wondered if I could ever repay it in my lifetime. By the way, although I insisted on paying Ethan's aide salary, Sam seemed a little dissatisfied. Later, his wife confided in me that he wanted to be relied upon as a parent. Time passed.
Hey, Andrew.
Ethan was smiling at me in the living room of Sam's home. Since then, I had worked hard and earned the title of Genius Pediatric Surgeon. Thanks to Sam, the director, and the research team, we had begun treatment to help Ethan recover from his paralysis. Although he was still in a wheelchair, he had been steadily improving, and now he could speak quite well and even move his left hand a little. Ethan had found a new dream. I couldn't become a soccer player, but someday I want to teach kids how to play soccer. As for me, I remembered the kids at the foster home who would hold back from saying they didn't feel well because they didn't want to trouble the staff. Because of Ethan and the other children I'd seen, I wanted to provide medical care they could receive without fear. So I began offering free monthly checkups at the foster home where I grew up and other nearby facilities. Gradually, other pediatricians supported the cause and began helping, and the number of participating facilities grew. Ethan was delighted and said, "Andrew, you're so cool. I'm proud of you." I finally felt like I was beginning to repay the foster home staff for all they had done for us. We even discovered hidden medical conditions in some children during the checkups. The staff thanked me, and I couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed. Reflecting on the downfall of the Goodman family, I felt I had learned firsthand that what goes around comes around. I resolved to continue protecting the health of children who will carry the future, doing everything I can in my capacity as a doctor. I also vowed to cherish my connections with people and my actions each day, never forgetting gratitude as I move forward.